When Stranger Things Season 4 came out, people said it was a return to form for the series. That it fixed all the show's problems, and how it was scary again, and everyone praised the main villain. Some even said it was the best season yet. But let me tell you a secret, it wasn't. To be fair, there had been a couple bad seasons leading up to this disaster, which made it seem more palpable. Season 1 was great, and everyone loved it. Season 2 was a boring rehash that was ultimately pretty forgettable. And Season 3 leaned so hard into the 80s nostalgia that it became a weird action comedy. So when Season 4 came around, a lot of the fans became immersed in the darker atmosphere and what on the surface seemed to be an effort to imitate Season 1's mystery and horror. But ultimately, that's all it was, surface level. So let's go into this journey together and debunk Stranger Things Season 4 and reveal it for what it truly was, which is a hot mess. So grab your snacks and drinks because this is going to take a while. Chapter 1. Bigger doesn't mean better. Now it's no secret that the cast of Stranger Things has gotten overstuffed with too many pointless characters. In fact, both the cast and the Duffer Brothers have acknowledged this issue. And it's gotten to the point where in episode 2 alone, there are 8 different plotlines happening all at once. You got Max being depressed, Eleven being bullied, Joyce and Murray going to Russia, Lucas and the other popular kids looking for Eddie, Nancy investigating the murder, Hopper in the gulag, Jonathan getting high with Argyle, and the government going after Eleven. Now because there are so many plotlines happening in this show, it throws off the momentum, making everything feel slow and all over the place at the same time. This is because we have completely different and disconnected plot lines going on simultaneously. We have Hopper and Joyce's storylines, which is an action-adventure prison escape story. You got guns, explosions, gritty hand-to-hand combat, torture, airplanes crashing, more shooting, killing monsters with swords, killing monsters with guns, helicopters, evil Russians, and so on. But in the same episode, you'll jump over to Will, Mike, and Jonathan, who act like they're in a wacky stoner comedy. They get high, meet weird kids, pull pranks, and get into all sorts of shenanigans.
Shut up, dude!
The obvious problem here is that these stories don't jive well together, and it makes it feel like we're watching a bunch of different shows at the same time. And that's a problem if you really love one plotline over the others. For example, if you like Max's storyline where she's trying to avoid getting killed by Vecna, then every time they break away from her, you're gonna have to wait like half an hour as the show has to cycle through 56 other characters before they get back to Max. It gets to the point where you kind of forget what was going on with the other characters in their last scene. Like, oh yeah, Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie are trying to investigate the lake where one of the bullies died to see if there was a portal there left by Vecna, because his murders open up holes in time and space for some reason. However, they have to hide because the police put up a curfew in Hawkins in order to look for Eddie because they think he killed the depressed cheerleader, and now a teenager took over the town and has rallied a bunch of hillbillies to find the main characters. I almost forgot about this because I was so wrapped up in Mike, Will, and Jonathan trying to find the coordinates to a secret military bunker where Eleven is being held. They got the coordinates from inside a pen the secret agent had, so they had to go visit Dustin's girlfriend from across the country because she was the only one they knew that had a computer or something. But her computer was taken away by her really religious dad, so they had to come up with an elaborate plan involving the kids from Captain Fantastic to help them get the computer back.
Let me run that back for you. Smutny was me, smutny, magnet, smutny,
In other words, it all feels a bit jarring to watch because things pick up and slow down at so many different times in one episode, it takes away any feeling of natural buildup. You can't just jump from a 1980s action spoof to a murder mystery about a supernatural serial killer. Of course, having all these stories going on is just one part of the problem. The other issue is how these stories function inside the overarching narrative. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of it all. So every story follows a pattern of beginning, middle, and end. You start with the setup, build tension through rising action, hit the climax, and have a resolution. The problem with Stranger Things 4 is that all of these plots are completely separated and therefore have to compete for narrative rhythm. They rise and fall at different emotional beats, so the writers have to slow everything down in order to force synchronization. That's why you have to sit there and watch Hopper plan his escape 100 times, while the other characters sit in limbo, waiting for the writers to let them do something. This essentially creates a narrative gridlock where every plot is blocking the other from going at their own pace. And this really takes away from the enjoyment of the story because we as the audience are being jerked around more than a Caribbean chicken. And with all of this explained, it just makes me miss the first season of Stranger Things, when it was a more intimate story about a group of kids trying to rescue their friend from a monster. It wasn't trying to juggle a bunch of boring stories at once. In fact, what made season 1 so great is that everyone essentially had the same goal. Whether it was Joyce fucking around with the lights, Hopper investigating the shady government operation, Nancy teaming up with Jonathan, or Mike and the gang helping Eleven. It was all leading to the rescue of Will, and Barb, I guess. Will's disappearance was behind every motivation in the story, and because of this, you got to see how every character changed and grew from their shared experience. So even though the story juggled multiple plots at once, it was held together by the same mood, pacing, and mystery. The show wasn't trying to be 1,000 things at once, it was its own story. And by the time of season 4, it's clear that Stranger Things has gotten away from itself. It tried to become too much, too quickly, and in doing so, it became a mess of meaningless characters and storylines. Chapter 2. The Characters. So not only does this show have way too much going on, and too many characters to juggle, it also horribly mishandles them at the same time. The biggest and most obvious problem is most characters have nothing to do and have no character arcs. And there's no better example of this than Joyce, who essentially just sits around most of the time looking mildly concerned while Murray and Hopper do everything for her. She doesn't grow or change over the course of the season, and it makes her part in the plot feel empty and meaningless. But because the writing here is so bad, I have to go back to Storytelling 101 in order to explain this problem fully. So for any typical character arc to work, a character has to fulfill their want and need. Almost every journey begins with the character in a state of normality, but they want something. Their want is the external goal that the character pursues. It could be an object, a position, a relationship, and so on. It's the thing that drives the plot forward and creates conflict. In season 4, Joyce wants to reunite with Hopper and rescue him from the gulag. But characters also have a need. This is something internal that they have to confront in order to grow as a person. Joyce, however, isn't missing anything fundamental that her journey makes her realize. Of course, Joyce wants to rekindle her relationship with Hopper, but the show doesn't do a good job at establishing her loneliness or need for companionship. We actually don't get any time to understand her emotional state before Hopper's message arrives in the mail. All we know is that she seems to be slightly irritated with her stay-at-home job, but that never comes up again and is more played as a joke. For example, it would have been more compelling had we got more time with Joyce and observed how she was feeling about the move to California.
After all, we are California, always at the forefront of innovation.
Maybe we see her with a glass of wine in the morning, revealing some PTSD over Hopper's death. All the while, she's trying to manically provide for her kids, but she's struggling to keep up with them as they get older. Or perhaps she sees Eleven struggling, and feels guilty that she isn't able to parent her on her own. Joyce could go on a date that ends badly, or maybe she's thrown away any possibility of a relationship and claims that she's okay with being alone. All of these ideas would create the sense that she not only wants Hopper to come back, but that she also needs to confront her own loneliness. And by the time Hopper sends his message, Joyce is so stuck in her cycle and bad habits that she is resistant to the idea of helping him. Perhaps the hope of finding Hopper is too much for her to bear, and she can't stand the idea of losing him again, so hoping he's alive seems fruitless. You know, some more development and texture to her character, so she does more than be an awkward sidekick on this quest to Russia. But as it is, she has no internal conflict in season 4. Joyce just wants to get Hopper back, and then she does. There just isn't a deeper realization for her character. After all, we already knew that she was willing to take insane risks for the people she cared about. So nothing is lost or gained from the experience. And that's boring to watch because audiences want to watch their favorite characters change. Telling us how a character got from point A to point B simply isn't enough. But at least Joyce serves as a narrative vessel that explains how Hopper returns to Hawkins. Other characters, however, don't even have that kind of plot value. For example, the entire California crew could have been erased from the show, and it wouldn't have made an ounce of difference to the story. Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle are pretty much just there for some comedic relief and boring gay teen melodrama.
Don't stop. Okay, you're the heart. Okay, remember that. You're the heart. I will fuck you, alright? I will enter you.
Essentially, their story just boils down to an elongated fetch quest. That all leads to them picking up 11 so they can cheer her on as she does everything on her own. Not only is their plot completely pointless, but the characters themselves don't have any fulfilling chemistry or any meaningful arcs. In the first couple of episodes, it's established that Jonathan is a stoner and wants to break up with Nancy. And that's it. That's all the development he gets this season. I mean, sure, he accepts Will's homosexuality, but A, he was never against Will being gay in the first place, and B, if that's the only arc you have for a main character, then maybe he shouldn't be in the show anymore? Just like Joyce, Jonathan utterly fails to grow or change over the course of the season. Even his drama with Nancy doesn't end up going anywhere. They don't break up or even really discuss what happened to their relationship. So the only plot that relied on his character wasn't even fulfilled by the end of the season. Fantastic! Mike has a similar problem, where his character arc this season is to tell Eleven that he loves her, and yeah, that's it.
Wah, wah, wah.
And why is Will such a pansy now? We see throughout the season that Will is completely useless to himself and everyone around him. This really bothered me when it came to Angela bullying Eleven. Will does nothing to stand up for his adopted sister, and as a result, it lessens the bond between them. And with Will trying to seduce Mike off to the side, it makes everything between them feel a lot more bitter and weird. Which is a shame because these characters haven't gotten much time together, and it would have been nice to see Eleven be more included into the Byers family. I mean, after all, she doesn't spend any real time with Jonathan, or even Joyce for that matter. And on a character level, Will is shown to be a pretty formidable kid in Season 1. When he first encounters the Demogorgon, for example, Will grabs his rifle immediately, and even after he's captured, he survives for days in the Upside Down on his own. So it's odd that someone with this much grit and survival experience is unable to stand up to Angela, after she publicly humiliates Eleven on multiple occasions. I mean, they haven't known what to do with Will after he stopped being a MacGuffin in Season 1 and 2, so now this is what he's been reduced to.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Then there's Argyle, who is more of a meme than a character at this point, but don't worry, we'll get to him in a second. So none of these people serve any real value to the story, or their own characters. They're just in the show to remind you that they exist, and nothing else. And once you notice this issue, it's very difficult to unsee it.
If we're gonna turn this company around, we gotta start cutting the crust off this shit sandwich.
Just like the others, Robin only has one thing that she accomplishes on her own in the entire season. It's when she convinces the warden to let her and Nancy go interview Victor. But even this isn't essential to the plot and could have been written around. They could have had Nancy convince him on her own, and it would have been the same thing. It's essentially like all these characters are just getting handed participation medals. Like, here you go, you were part of the team, I guess. Even though you just sat on the bench and took a knee during the national anthem, you piece of—
What?
There also isn't clear development for Robin's character here, because she suddenly became this jittery dork. In Season 3, she had a lot more confidence and was actually a pretty commanding character. And even though she panicked a couple of times, she certainly didn't run her mouth this often.
You are 046, Popeye.
Yeah, I can count.
I cracked it.
Cracked what?
I cracked the code.
It's not a really good idea for me, though. You know, I gotta keep in shape for the ladies.
Yeah, and how's that working out for you?
Ignore her. She seems cool.
A few moments later.
Spooky Victor Creel, like 70 years old. Yep. So he's a grandpa murderer. I just thought that by shot in the dark you were being modest or hiding something super solid up. Truly a shot in the dark, like we are snipers with blindfolds on who've been spun around. The whole thing is a colossal mistake. I'm breaking out in a rash. My boobs hurt because nobody takes girls seriously in this field. They just don't.
Talking about useless and annoying characters, Erica and Argyle are also jammed into this season. Now, comedy is pretty subjective, and some of you may enjoy these characters. But what isn't subjective is how little impact they have on the plot. Essentially, these characters are just one-note comedy acts that keep getting replayed again and again, which really sucks if you didn't find it funny the first time. For example, Argyle's bit that he likes to smoke weed, and that's the punchline for every joke he makes.
This risotto is smacking, dude. Still have no idea who he is.
And hey, I like to hit the old spirit pipe as much as the next guy. but it shouldn't be a character's whole personality. And the same can pretty much be said for Erica. Besides the fact that she's a sassy black girl, what could you describe about this character? She has no other discerning personality traits, and for the entire season, she just hangs around in the background. Even when she is given something to do, like being the lookout for Lucas and Max, it doesn't matter, because she gets captured by the bullies right away, so she might as well not been there to begin with. My point is that Stranger Things used to be really good at giving characters depth. At first, Steve kinda seemed like that one-note douchey prom king guy. However, as everything evolved, we saw him grow into a kind-hearted hero. See, the more time we spent with these characters and got to know them, the more that was revealed to us. But now the show doesn't seem to have much to say about any of the people in it. I mean, Erica's been in the show as a regular character for 2 seasons, and she hasn't evolved at all during the course of that time. And it's just not very interesting because stagnation and a lack of creativity is boring. However, that's not to say that the writers do much better with the characters they do put a lot of time and effort into. But don't worry, we're gonna get to them later. For now, I think I've made my point. The majority of the characters either have nothing to do or have no room to grow. In either case, it's pretty boring to watch because everyone is just a cardboard cutout of who they used to be. Chapter 3. The background characters. Background characters are easy to overlook in a show like Stranger Things, especially when you have all these people to focus on. But they are important nonetheless. They are the texture that tells you what kind of place you're in, who the heroes are fighting for, and what's at stake if they fail. Unfortunately, with Stranger Things 4, the world is now populated with people that are either forgettable, shallow, stupid, or downright evil. Are we supposed to care about the Wheeler family, with the bratty daughter and the mean and stupid husband? I guess I care about Karen, because she's hot and she's from The Sopranos. She is also the most memorable of all the family members. She's a character that brought a sense of reality to the craziness of the story. But she seems to be forgotten about in season 4. Am I supposed to be invested in the guidance counselor, or the police officers? Or how about Hawkins itself? A town full of stupid hicks that form a mob after hearing one speech from an angry teenager. Seriously, this entire plotline gets worse the more you think about it. So building up to this scene, Vecna is killing teenagers in Hawkins. The police are both incompetent and unable to deal with the real threat. So at a town meeting, Jason, the captain of the high school basketball team, gives a speech. He thinks that Eddie is responsible for the murders and that he is leading a cult. And without any real evidence, most of the townsfolk are on board with this vague plan to extinguish evil from Hawkins?
To join me in this fight, let us cast out this evil and save Hawkins, together!
And it's stand up against evil. Who will stand up for me against the evil? Who will stand in the gap when the enemy comes in like a flood?
Why is this all it takes to convince the town? Like, I know this guy looks like he's 48 years old with a wife and kids, probably belongs to some kind of golf club, but he's supposed to be 18 years old. He can't even buy a fucking beer, and yet he's somehow able to earn so much respect in one speech that the whole town is willing to break the law and start a mob while openly disobeying the police? And I know that this is a show with monsters and alternate dimensions, but this man-child is the most unrealistic part of the whole thing. But sadly, this kind of strange public reaction isn't isolated to this one incident. There is also the roller rink sequence, which is cartoonishly stupid. So Eleven is on a date with Mike, and Angela, the high school bully, decides to embarrass Eleven by coordinating everyone at the roller rink into a mass bully session. They surround Eleven chanting insults before tossing a milkshake on her. The planning involved in this humiliation is quite elaborate. Like, before all of this happened, Angela would have had to tell everyone at the rink what her plan was, and they would not only need to agree to it, but also participate in a coordinated attack. They would also have to bring the DJ in on the plan, which he seems overly happy to do.
Wipe out!
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
And it's not like anyone tries to stop this or call anyone out for this psychopathic behavior. I mean, look at everyone laughing here. These people are bystanders and they find it hilarious. How much pull does this girl have in this town? And I don't care if this is a reference to Carrie, it's so retarded and it makes every person in this town look like a fucking maniac. So of course when Eleven retaliates and hits Angela in the face, she's treated like a terrorist by the police. They interrogate her without a lawyer, they don't let her see her family, and they whisk her off to juvenile detention without any legal proceedings. It just doesn't feel remotely real. So to reiterate, you have a world filled with idiotic parents, inept and corrupt police officers, stupid townsfolk that are easily manipulated by a teenager, demonic goblin children that are willing to commit psychological warfare at the drop of a hat, a psychopath, an alcoholic mother, scheming and manipulative Russians, more goblin kids that are excited to inflict violence on their schoolmates, and a teenager that looks like he's old enough to have fought in the Battle of Gettysburg. So fuck it, let Vecna take over the world. I'd prefer to be turned into some hive mind creature than live amongst these degenerates. Had the show just backed off a little bit and tried to make some background characters that were a bit more likable, it would have added some emotional impact to the conflict with Vecna. Remember Mr. Clark and the diner owner? Yeah, they were nice. But now, if you're not a part of the main cast, you're just an asshole. For example, they could have given Ted more of an arc. Over the course of the show, Ted has been the same neglectful and stupid parent.
What did I do?
And it gets to the point where Karen almost has an affair with Billy because of it. The only reason she doesn't go through with this is due to her own guilt. So it would have been better had we seen her decision be met with some reward. Like maybe the dad changes a bit and becomes more involved in what the kids are doing. You know, he could have tried to cover for them with the police at some point, or just seemed like a more attentive husband and father. It would have been nice to see a shift in his character, and it would have given us another person to root for in Hawkins. But instead, he just sits around acting the same way he has the entire show. It really wouldn't have changed the overall plot, or taken much to add this change either. Just a small gesture to give the character a bit more depth. Just give us something to work with. I mean, I guess you get the lesbian trombone player. She seems nice. Doesn't have much screen time though, she just smiles a couple of times. What have you done, Stranger Things? You used to be so perfect. Oh, I'm so mad I could take over the whole town! Chapter 4, 10 years later. You think it would be kinda obvious when making a show about kids that it would be important to try and get the seasons out as quickly as possible so they don't, I don't know, grow up? Well, unfortunately, nobody told the Duffer Brothers that, because it's pretty much been a decade since the first season came out. Now, this wouldn't pose such a big issue if the writers tried to at least compensate for the real-life time jump, but it seems like they're dead set on trying to make us believe that Mike grew from a child to Skeletor in 2.5 years. The first season takes place in November of 1983, and season 4 takes place in March of 1986. And it just kind of boggles the mind a bit when you put the full show into perspective. Like, why didn't the writers just make season 4 take place in 1989? That way the show would have taken place over the course of 6 years. Something far more believable. I mean, what are they feeding these kids in Hawkins? Growing juice? Okay, not my best joke, but you get the point. This isn't the 70s anymore. You can't get away with a 33-year-old Rizzo acting like she's 18 while flirting with a stuffed panda bear. It just doesn't work anymore. And I know things like production, world-changing viruses, strikes, and all the other excuses Hollywood TV shows come up with have some impact. But maybe if you didn't have like 1 billion characters and 7 different TV shows in one, it would get made faster. Hell, Game of Thrones managed to pump out a season every year, so is it really that difficult for a show about teenagers solving mysteries to not take a fucking decade to finish? Succession began and ended within the same time Stranger Things was airing.
This is not IP I'm familiar with.
Which again just goes to show bigger doesn't mean better. And waiting so long between seasons makes the show more forgettable. It's just not in public conversation as much anymore, so naturally we as an audience begin to lose interest. And I'm not saying Stranger Things doesn't have hype around it, of course it does. But let's be honest here, most of us aren't going to remember all the character dynamics and relationships like we would if the show came out a bit more regularly. Netflix is aware of this and is telling fans to rewatch the entire show in order to clue in as to what's going on in season 5. Because people are going to be like, oh yeah, who's that chick again? Why is Uma Thurman's daughter so annoying now? Will's gay now? What? Wasn't Eleven not able to speak for like half a season? Why can she talk in the flashback?
What's going on?
Maybe if the show didn't take a decade to finish, all of this would have been easier to put together, But it's not, and it fucking sucks.